Hey guys, Mike here. Welcome back to another video on the channel. Back in the workshop, and I'm back on the diesel in this one. As I mentioned in the last video, I'm going away for 10 days and I've really got to get this thing squared away. Make sure everything's working on it so when I'm on the trip, it doesn't have any problems basically, and the living is comfortable too. So I've got things like front driveline vibration to sort out, rear driveline vibration. I've got some armour to build on the rear just for rock rash. I've got a bit of engine tuning to do. Samantha's got a puncture. That's a big job. And there's an oil leak at the front and lots of other stuff to do as well in terms of getting it ready and just making sure it's comfortable. So it's going to be a bit of voiceovering in this video because I've really just had to get stuck in and work on it. I hope you enjoy the video and let's get to it. My first job isn't that exciting, but it's essential for my sanity. There's a rattle coming from the fender, and it's driving me insane on long drives. I've stopped numerous times to try and pinpoint what this is, and I've convinced myself it's one of the snorkel bolts. But on closer inspection, they're all tight, so it can't be. So I've rigged up a high-tech exhaust gas system, so I can run the engine and listen. It's the stay rod for the bonnet. An easy fix, fortunately, and my first job off the list. Now that's done, it's diesel heater time. I want this thing operational early so I'm ready for a wet autumn and a cold winter. My early fabrications of the tyre carrier included a rack for my Mark 1 diesel heater build, and it worked really well, be it the heater design was a bit bigger due to an onboard fuel tank. But for some reason, when I made the new bumper tyre carrier earlier this year, I cut this rack off and I didn't put it back on. Probably because I had a bright idea that I never went through with. But regardless, this thing is going back on because it's actually a very useful addition to the tyre carrier. It's looking good and I can outfit the tyre carrier again, especially with the shovel. I cannot express how important it is for me to carry this in the winter. Plus it also looks very shiny. But the diesel heater just needs a little bit more work. The outlet is 4mm steel. It's all I had at the time when I built it, so I'm replacing it with a lighter aluminium outlet. I test the diesel heater just to make sure it's operating and running well, and everything looks good. This Mark II heater build takes fuel from the Jeep's main tank, and this makes the unit much lighter. The next job on the list is renovating this front prop shaft that I took off of my 1994 litre. This is going on my diesel due to its length. New U-joints, cleaning, priming, painting, and refitting a balancing weight that unfortunately dropped off. This probably won't be as balanced as it was before, but it's the best I can do with what I have in this workshop. Anyway, I'm on to the next task, and it involves reducing rock rash damage on the rear cut and fold. In earlier episodes, I showed how to build wheel well liners and centre rock rash plates to save vulnerable floor pans and sheet metal from stone impact and future corrosion repair. I'm very particular about corrosion prevention, and the rear needs better protection. So I'm using offcuts from the centre plates and adapting them to fit the rear cut and fold so they can take brutal rock impacts without worry. So here's the finished product, both sides done, although I think this side turned out a little bit better than the other side, but it is difficult to get these things to be identical. But you can kind of see that it connects to the rear wheel well and runs down the underneath to the rear of the bumper. You've got a little bit of a bend here, just protecting that piece of vulnerable material from all of the rock rash it has to face, and I've cut out a section so the spring mounts can just protrude through a little bit. So this piece of material here mounts to that tube, and it screws into like the plastic wheel well there and the bumper at the back. So it doesn't actually connect to the body of the vehicle, which is what I always try and do when I make wheel well liners or bash plates. I never mount them to the Jeep, they're always mounted to the auxiliary parts, because the Jeep is the most fragile thing, you know, it's 1mm metal, but there's all these other pieces aren't. So and they're always spaced out, so you can see that there's a big gap between this and anything Jeep related, anything like on the body, so that when material builds up in there, like snow and dirt and stuff, it's not like vibrating and touching against the sheet metal and like basically corroding it out and scratching the paint away, because that's what happens. So you know, you can jet wash that out. It's the same with the front wheel well liner, you know, it's evenly spaced and mounted to the fender only, and that connects to the center rock rash plate, which again is only mounted to the box rockers, so the legs that come off of the frame stiffener. So the box rocker is what holds that plate in place, so it's evenly, it's got like a lot of breathing space between the actual floor pans, which is why they haven't corroded out. You might think, why don't you run a mud flap, that'll solve your problems, but it actually doesn't. You know, if you run a mud flap on the front, you just decrease the angle of impact from the stones, that's all. You don't eliminate it. You know, they're still going to wipe out the rear door, because I've had that experience myself. I got chips on my rear door where I've had front mud flaps, but the stones make it past the mud flap because of the angle that they release that, and they start wiping out the doors. The same here, if you run a flap like that, the stones are still going to be thrashing around here. They're still going to make it past here as they leave the tyre, and I know that from experience. But you have to have pretty long flaps, don't get excited, to stop stone impact, so they'd have to be like down there like that, and then they'd work. But the only problem I've got with that is in the winter with the snow, the flaps can get ripped off, and even when I ran chains, the chains broke. I went to thicker chains, and then the mud flap itself just got kind of deformed badly because of the chains and started to get torn, and the rubber got ripped. So I ended up just tossing the mud flaps away and trying to think of something a bit more streamlined. So that's kind of why I do these things. It's a bit of a long-winded chat, but a lot of you have probably fallen asleep by now, so you're welcome. Despite what that looked like on camera, that was actually quite a long job. But that's the rear end finished, and now I have some work to do on the front, starting with a slight oil leak from where the axle tube meets the pumpkin. And this is a job I am revisiting once again. Definitely coming from there. That is a shame. You can see where it's still leaking, just at the side there where I missed with the weld. That looks utterly hideous, but that should stop the oil. And now it's time. It's time to put four-wheel drive back in the vehicle. This shaft I've been building up over a little bit of time, you know, just in my spare time, just getting it ready for this trip. And this is a genuine Spicer shaft off of the Renix Jeep out there, the 4 litre. And because it's come off of a 4 litre, it's an extremely long drive shaft at about 800mm fully compressed, I believe. So I think that's one of the longest shafts that Jeep did. The funny thing about the diesels, if you look at a diesel Cherokee, the transmission and the engine are really short. So you end up with a super long rear drive shaft. I think it's the longest drive shaft that Jeep do out of the diesels. And then when you compare that to a petrol engine, a benzene engine, they're way shorter. But the thing about the diesel is it has a really short front drive shaft. So when you lift them, I can lift that vehicle to about 6.5 inches with no rear driveline vibration. And I always used to get asked from people, how is it you don't have an SYE? And the reason being is that the really long rear drive shaft means that you can lift it much higher without needing an SYE, but what you run into is front driveline vibration. And these diesels eat drive shafts when you start lifting them up because of that short drive shaft. So I've had to move my axle forward a little bit, which has meant that I've needed a new drive shaft, one of these long ones, a really long one like this. I did buy one, this one here. This is 800 mil, the longest drive shaft as well, I believe. There might be some guys out there who correct me. Maybe there's a longer one, I don't know. But this one is so badly balanced, and I paid 3,000 crowns for this one. 3,000 crowns here in Europe. It's really a lot of money for what this is, and it is atrociously balanced. I've had to modify it heavily to get it to work. The angles it can achieve were really bad. It was just, it's just an awful bit of equipment. So that is really just scrap, to be honest with you. But this one here is the real deal. So I'm putting this in. It feels great. Ooh, Jimmy. So I just put the new shaft in. Just using that to tighten everything. No movement. A lot of engagement there. You can see it's kind of perfect, really. It should be anyway, and that feels great, but it's really how it sounds. Yeah, it feels good, man. No binding. The other one used to bind slightly. Just looking at the clearances up there, plenty of clearance, so it can do even more steeper angles than this. That's great. I'm pretty happy with the front shaft, and hopefully it's vibration free. I won't know until I test it, but before I do, I've been doing some engine tuning adjustments. I've made a new plate with a 1/8 MPT to 4AN adapter on the manifold, and I've replaced the standard rubber hose with a braided line to the LDA on the top of the pump. I've also made a 1/8 MPT to 1/14 MPT adapter on the pump itself. And all of this won't make a huge difference, but on a boosted system, rubber expands, which contributes to boost lag. The biggest adjustment I've made though is a very slight pump advancement. It's actually taken some of the knock off the engine and made it sound much better. I've also upped the wastegate on the turbo from 17 psi to 20 psi. I noticed increasing exhaust gas temps on hill climbs at full load, and it's made me curious about adding a bit more air to the mix and a slightly more advanced injection to gain a bit more power up top. I'm not sure yet though, and it's time for some test driving. I've just noticed my electronic oil pressure sensor is dying. Good job I installed an analog one. But now that the engine's warmed up, I can push it and do some testing. I'm taking it up a gradual but continuous hill climb, building up speed into 5th gear, and I'm keeping my eye on the EGT gauge. You can see on the gauges, the exhaust gas temp is rising steadily. Boost is building fast and dropping off between gear shifts, but it's building back up quickly and the power output feels very strong. The Jeep's pulling like a train and I'm not feeling any loss of power up top. The Jeep is very heavy though. It's fully loaded at almost 2.3 tons, so I'm expecting the cooling system to be the Achilles heel in this test. I'm at max boost now on a steeper hill climb in 5th, and you can see the EGT's climbing. 620 degrees C and above is potential piston melting territory. But what I'm looking for in this test is for the Jeep to build power and to be able to back off a bit and maintain speed and torque, and for the temps to drop off and stabilise. And that's exactly what's happening here. The temps are levelling off to 536 degrees C and holding around that area, and the boost is around 15 pounds while pulling uphill and maintaining torque and power. But now I've stopped, and as I've predicted, the cooling system has struggled to cope with all of this. The vehicle weight and the tyre size are the worst factors here. Obviously driving at more normal speeds would make a big difference, but I need to think carefully about how I can make this cooling system function better in the future. Anyway, winter's almost here and it's -10, -25, which should fix that problem for now. And it's also going to mean another massive power increase due to air density. But all that nerd shit's out the way and it's back to the workshop. The front end was vibration free, but the rear is in need of some desperate attention. So this drive shaft is unfortunately been a real disappointment. It's just not been good at all. In fact, it's looking very, very bad. You can see the play in it. It's not the shaft, it's where it's wallowed out inside there. This is really why I should just bite the bullet and just sort of put some cash towards a SYE, or take that bit at the back, make a hack and tap out of it, get the flange with the seal, and get the other drive shaft, the other front drive shaft, and use this part, this double cardan part on that drive shaft, and build my own drive shaft with a hack and tap, at least for the time being. There we are. Easy as that. Oh, I reckon a lot of fluid's going to come out. Because I overfilled it, didn't I? Wait for it. Woo! Well, that's not so bad. It's getting worse. Oh, Jesus Christ. Let's put this all down there. You got to slow down the happy flow. Okie dokie, let's get out of here. If I look at that one there, yeah, this is easily going to be able to be made. There is plenty of length here. I mean, this is a beast to pull out as well. It's a lot of suction on it. I don't know what's going on there, but yeah. If I put a double cardan on the end of there, that would be good. I should really do that. But it's this bit here that concerns me. It's got some great angles though. Look at that. But not the paint chipping off. They just didn't prime it. But just whether there's much movement. But it feels great. Oh, I can feel a little bit of a... Can I? No? Is that in my mind? But this is the bit I was going to make into a hack and tap, you see. Because I've already got that piece, so there is no reason why I can't do that if I just buy the kit, which is like $60. Yeah, just looking at it now, $76 from Ironcock Off-Road. Pretty good. Well, I've just decided to put the shaft back in. I've just greased it up and reinstalled it. I almost let OCD get the better of me. Almost tore it all apart, repainted it, greased everything up, reassembled, reinstalled, and I thought, nah, that is a waste of time, considering that I've just ordered a hack and tap kit. You saw that drive shaft I was talking about earlier, the one I said wasn't balanced particularly well. The worst part about that shaft is really the double cardan bit at the back. It's really crap and it isn't a Spicer unit, so you know the clearances are a bit different and the casting's different and it's not so great. But that drive shaft under there, the double cardan slip joint that you just saw me playing around with, that has a pretty decent rear end on it in terms of the U-joint part. So I'm going to take that off and install it on that one and try and build a rear drive shaft. So I'm doing this on the cheap and hopefully I won't regret it. But you know, an SYE is pretty expensive, and the reason I don't want to go down that route right now is there is a guy I know in the US who's sourcing one for me. He has gone radio silent, which you know, he's probably got his own shit going on right now, which pretty selfish if you ask me. I mean, you know, he sort of gets his priorities right. Basically, obviously I'm being sarcastic, you know, I don't want to chase him. I'll just wait for him to get in touch with me, or I'll just, you know, or I'll just order one. He's getting one for me and I'm paying him and he's sort of getting it sent over. It's not like a freebie or nothing, but you know, I just wanted to wait for him to do it because he was able to get it from somewhere a lot cheaper than I could, and the shipping would be way cheaper. So, but I don't want to go down that route anyway. Long story short, because I've got a 242 out in that 4 litre out there, and a 242 in my vehicle would be kind of nice. I don't know how good those T cases are, I need to research it more, but until I've got some solid answers, I don't want to spend any money on like an SYE for that 231 if that thing out there could be better. So the point was to switch them over, 231 in there, 242 in mine, and then I got full-time four-wheel drive, which in the winter might be a real bonus for me. So instead of just rear-wheel drive and then four-wheel drive and then having a change when you got patches of ice and patches of asphalt, but that's it really. The Jeep's all ready to roll, and I've got no other jobs to do on it. Pretty surprised though about how much power it gained from me adjusting the pump and the turbo. Now I won't know how that really performs until after I've been driving a couple of hours on like the motorway at sort of high speed, because then heat soak starts to come in and you do start to lose performance. And you know, with diesels, it's a funny thing. It's not like driving a petrol engine. You know, being in a diesel, it's all about being at the right RPM ranges at different loads and being at peak torque. You can have as much boost and fuel as you want, but if you're not at the right RPM range, the reaction is just not good, and all you're producing is heat, and you'll just kill the engine. So a lot of fuel and a lot of boost isn't always a good thing. It's more about getting the vehicle balanced out, and then you can start kind of playing with it from there with a little bit more fuel and boost and stuff. This is what I found anyway. I'm no tuning expert, but obviously I've been playing around with this for a while, you know, and I've got it wrong, and I've also got it right, and it seems like it's even better now, but I just have to watch it in terms of the EGTs, you know, and just keep an eye on the gauges and stuff. But I'm talking a lot anyway at the end of this video. You'll see on the table there some goodies for the 4 litre. So in a following episode from this one, maybe after the next or coming up soon anyway, I will be cleaning up the valve cover and painting it. I got a valve cover gasket just here. Not a brilliant one. It looks like it's made out of cork, but you know, it's just a valve cover gasket. Got an oil filter, got a fuel filter, and it's actually got its own battery now, which is great because that can live in there and I can start it and drive it and use it as a vehicle. But the inside definitely needs some cleaning up. It stinks in there. But if you have a look at this picture, it's got some tyres on it. They were gifted to me by my neighbour. He had those on his King cab, and he, you know, just swapped them out, and he's got some new ones. So appreciate that from him. Got some tyres. I just need some on there for rolling it around at the moment and getting it into the garage. But I cleaned the wheels up too. Nothing special. Just cleaned them off with the wire brush and just put a lick of silver paint on them, which is crap. But in the long run, I'd like to get them actually looking better and do a gold paint on them and have them looking original. So this is just something for the time being. But you know, it does make it look a little bit more respectable anyway. And when it's running, it's going to be pretty exciting because it's hopefully going to be driving in the next video, and I can see whether the transmission's working and how everything sounds. But I think I'm going to check the differential fluid level just before I drive it in case it's drained out. I don't want to like cook anything. It's been standing for 14 years. But anyway, lots of talking by me as per usual, as you've probably gathered when you watch this channel. You get to the end of the video, but I will see you in another one. Take care. Thanks for watching. Appreciate your support, and yeah, all that other stuff.